Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the FFT committee. We've got a busy agenda and a really interesting agenda to deal with this morning. And for those of you who are I don't see any unfamiliar names, but we're going to start by going into executive session to discuss a number of matters. We anticipate that's going to take about 45 minutes. When we will come back into regular public session and continue with a public agenda. So, first of all, Ellen, could you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Trustee Cates.
Here.
And I believe Trustee Kane has joined us.
Yes, hello.
Trustee Ames is not available to participate today. Trustee Flood.
Here.
Trustee McMahon.
Present.
Trustee Mishu.
Present.
Trustee Riley.
Here.
We are all set.
Great, and I know we're also joined by at least two faculty representatives, Michael Scott and Clyde Mitchell. I see both of them. Welcome. I don't see William Otto, but perhaps he'll be joining. So we are here. We have a quorum, and I'd like to solicit a motion for the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee of the Board of Trustees to go into executive session under the provisions of 1 MRSA section 4056A to discuss the evaluation of personnel and the consideration and discussion of appointments, evaluations, employment, and duties, as well as 1 MRSA section 4056C to discuss the condition, acquisition, or disposition of real property or economic development if premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of the University of Maine system. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Mishu and seconded by Trustee Kane. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ellen, could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Trustee Cates.
Yes.
Trustee Kane.
Yes.
Trustee Flood.
Yes.
Trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Trustee Mishu.
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. So we'll be in executive session and again back in hopefully 45. Okay, we are. Okay, well, we are back, and Ellen, do we have everybody back from session as far as you know?
Yeah, we should be good.
Okay, thank you all for your patience, those of you who have been waiting since 10:45, excuse me, since 9:45 when I thought we'd be back. And our apologies for keeping you waiting. The discussion just went a little bit longer than we thought. So we'll get back now to the public agenda and try to save time where we can and end as close to our appointed end as possible. But the first public session presentation is on an updated proposed FY 2024 University of Maine System operating budget and a student charge issue. So Ryan Lowe will lead us through that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly excited to be here today to present the FY24 UMS operating budget to the committee. For those of us that live in the budget world, it's not quite Christmas morning. That'll be when the board votes on this, but it's like a Christmas Eve day, maybe. So certainly excited to get it to this point. Really wanted to thank all the campuses and all the presidents for all the work that has gone into the budgets to get us to this spot. There's an incredible amount of work that goes on at the campus that we don't see in these public settings. There's a lot of faculty and staff that participate in campus budget committees. A lot of those take place in evenings. And so before I kind of kicked off the highlights of the presentation, I really just wanted to thank everyone for all of the work that goes on that we don't see on Zoom. So with that said, let me jump right in to the presentation. Presentation is included in your materials. This is, I think, the third time you've seen a version of this. So I do not intend to cover every piece of it. I've got about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions. So again, this just really reflects the schedule and where we are in this process. It's a year-long process. We're way over to the right side of this scale. A lot of work that has gone into this. You see kind of surrounding this point where we are in the schedule is the capital plan. So I'll make a little bit of reference to that, but you'll be hearing us talk about more about the capital plan at this committee's next meeting. So FY24, we certainly came into this understanding we had some significant budget pressures. Our enrollment in FY24, our projections are down. That has significantly impacted tuition revenue. It's also impacted auxiliary revenue. Again, as I note here, especially at our smaller campuses where we're continuing to see fewer students taking advantage of on-campus residency options. Market challenges, we've talked about those before, and their impact on the budget stabilization fund. I am at least tentatively pleased. These things are always subject to change, but the budget stabilization fund and our market returns are bouncing back just a little bit, and you'll see that in a couple of slides as we move forward. Gordian data continues to show challenges around campus net asset value, but I think we are starting to see some progress there and encouraged by that. System-wide budget assumptions that are really driving this budget. Let me just hit on a few of these. This budget does include a 3% in-state undergraduate tuition increase. There are increases for out-of-state students as well. We have always done those on a campus-by-campus basis. The situation for out-of-state students is different at Fort Kent than it is in Orono, than it is in Portland, and so you'll see different rates in the presentation for that. The budget does assume a 4.5% increase in state appropriation. Incredibly grateful to the governor for that proposal, for the bipartisan support we have had so far in that process, even recognizing that we've still got a little bit of time to get that one across the finish. The budget also assumes a 3% increase in compensation and a roughly 51% benefit rate moving forward. So some highlights in this budget, and again, I'll touch on just a few of these. Some of the details you'll see in slides moving forward. FY24 budgeted credit hours are down 7.4% below the FY23 budget. They're down about 3% based on FY23 actuals. I noted in my opening comments, occupancy continues to be a challenge on some of our smaller campuses. Capital investments in this budget are up by $1 million, about 3% over the FY23. So given the budget challenges, that's what we'll call that. We'll call that progress for sure. This budget is balanced. It does use a combination of campus reserves in some places. There are no new system funds in this budget, although we are recommending that some campuses be allowed to carry forward some budget stabilization funds that you approved in 2023, but the campuses won't use the full amount for. So this is where I'll talk about the budget changes. So this is typically the overview that I use to talk about where we end up as a system and where the individual campuses are. And so this is based on the budget that we presented to you at the end of March. And so collectively at that time, we were forecasting about a $10.1 million E&G deficit, about $1.4 million on the auxiliary side, which gets you to that $11.5 million number that you see in the middle of this page at the bottom. We were primarily closing that with campus reserve transfers of about $10.7 million. And then you see the two transfers that we were recommending from the budget stabilization fund. Again, those were commitments we made in 2023 and simply allowed the campuses to kind of roll those forward. On April 12th, we presented a modified version of that, recognizing a couple of changes that were occurring, primarily right there in the middle of the page. You can see the Presque Isle number shift. That was a result of a change in the way our relationship worked with academic partnerships, AP, as we call them. At that time, I mentioned to you that we would be back at this meeting and likely making adjustments at least at the Fort Kent line and likely on the USM one. And that's what you're going to see as I kind of roll forward. So this represents the final version, the final changes that we've made. I've highlighted kind of the areas that have changed from, again, what you saw on April 12th to what you see today. So let me just hit each one of these really, really quickly. You see the positive impact that the AP change made at Fort Kent. So again, if I roll back to the beginning of the month, you can see about a $1.7 million forecasted deficit there between E&G and auxiliary. I roll that forward, you can see the positive impact brings that gap down to about 1.5 million. Also means the campus needs to use less in reserve. So again, if you see the 957, if we go back, it was 300,000 higher or 1.2 million. At Maine Law, I'm going to skip over USM for just a second. At Maine Law, the gap is just a little bit bigger. So you can see we originally forecasted that at about 1.2. It's about 1.3 now. We were expecting that change. We were working on that when we were presented the April budget, trying to figure out how we were going to fund a technology position at 300 4th Street. And that change is reflected here. And we did lower the gap in governance and university services by the same amount. So those two lines netted out against each other. In the middle of the page or near the bottom, you'll see the USM numbers presenting a balanced budget with about a $500,000 deficit in E&G, a surplus on the auxiliary side that balances that out. Since your April 12th meeting, The AP change that I talked about did result in a positive $700,000 benefit to the University of Southern Maine. However, if you'll remember back to the original budget presentation that USM did, they were counting on about 1.6 million of kind of scholarship relief, if you will. So rather than E&G dollars relying on some of those external funding sources, about 1.6 million that would offset the E&G contribution and provide some budget savings. I think in reflection, now that the campus has had a chance to really kind of dig into those funds, we're thinking that the E&G benefit is going to be closer to 900,000 and not the full 1.6 million. So rather than count the full benefit of that $700,000 AP change and then get to the end of the year and be 700,000 short, the campus made the decision to simply offset that E&G savings initiative. So what you see here doesn't really reflect a change to the bottom line, but that change kind of happened on the sides. It is a positive change in the long-term picture, again, because those one-time scholarship transfers were just that. They were one-time. The AP savings here are ongoing, so that will reduce the structural gap for USM by that same 700,000 when you get out into 25 and 26 and 27. So a significant positive change, and want to make sure we send our thanks to Vice Chancellor Dorsey for that work with AP collectively across those three campuses that produced nearly $2 million in savings from our initial budget submission in late March. So very appreciative of those efforts. Kind of roll forward again. So this one is a little bit different than for anyone that has the budget materials in front of you, because the one thing I did here was reflect the updated investment gains and losses through the March board meeting. So I updated that number. I think it was originally 1.5 million in your packets. Our investment income gains now are about 2.9 million over budget. Over the, our 23 budgeted amount. So that would produce, if you accept all of the transfers and recommendations here, it brings our projected budget stabilization fund balance up to 1.5 million. That is, on one hand, that is $20 million less than it was when I reported to you just a couple of years ago. On the positive side, I'll note that number was negative $2-3 million just a couple of months ago. So certainly grateful to see that that has bounced back and is at least forecasting as if we'll have some funds available as we roll into 2024.
Ryan, point of clarification, those dollars that you showed on that chart are rollover they're not from current.
That's correct. You can actually see that right here. So the board originally approved, as an example, 938,000 to Fort Kent in 2023. It looks like they're only going to need 127,000 of that. They've requested to carry forward 500,000 of that difference into 2024. So we actually pick up about $300,000 there to our bottom line, and you see the same thing at Presque Isle, using less than we forecasted. So no new commitments, just allowing them to move forward. A couple of charts, just again showing you how state appropriation is looking. FY20 to FY25, the 27% increase over those 6 budget years. So, again, just want to be thankful to the governor and the legislature and acknowledge that significant investment. Also want to thank Sam Warren for her tireless efforts in Augusta on a regular basis. This shows you those same appropriation numbers adjusted for CPI, really just reflecting those kind of that middle 2010 to 2020 window when our appropriation was largely flat and we were consistently losing ground. We've seen that shift a little bit. Inflation is up, so we're continuing to lose a little bit of ground as we move forward, but certainly appreciative of the increases that we have received. Want to note here quickly, Maine Economic Improvement Fund is also part of this budget approval. $3 million increase proposed in the governor's budget. This simply shows you how those dollars are allocated out across the campuses. Want to note, for 2024, with the increase, that also increases the amount that goes through the Small Campus Initiative. Again, that's a competitive award program for our smaller campuses, also includes Maine Maritime. But of that $3 million increase that the governor has proposed, about half of that would roll into the UMaine USM distribution. But Vice Chancellor, in this case, Farini Monday, has suggested setting aside about half of that increase for a small campus project. Details to come on that as we roll forward, if we're fortunate enough to receive that increase. Again, I talked a little bit about the enrollment numbers on my introduction. Again, we'll just note overall down about 8% over the 4 years. There are some significant bright spots here. Again, you can see in the lower right-hand corner here, CBE and academic partnerships up 361%. That is significant. You can see the challenges that we have, particularly in the in-state side, down 19% from FY21 through FY24. Noted residence hall occupancy, a capacity overall, you can see here is up by about 300. That is a combination of some pluses and some minuses. So the increase here is a reflection of Portland Commons coming online in the 577 beds. And we do have two UMF halls that will be offline for renovations. So that will net out against that 577 and gives you a capacity of about 6,800 across the system. We're projecting 88% capacity. That is our highest kind of highest number since the pandemic. Tuition rates, again, I noted that this budget does include a 3% in-state undergraduate tuition increase. You see that reflected here in the kind of the middle top part of this column. The percentages are off just by a little bit, as you would imagine. We use round numbers. We don't charge students, cents when it comes to these. So sometimes it means the percentage is just off a little bit, but 2.8 to 3.1% across the system. And we see the various out-of-state and graduate rates as part of this chart as well. The next several slides that I'm going to show, really show you a version of this, just really tried to collapse some of these rates and put them all in kind of one place. This chart reflects the special and differential tuition rates that we have across the system. These are not all new rates. We had a handful of them that were new, but really felt like this was the first time that we'd really taken the opportunity to kind of pull them all together, put them in one place. And we wanted to do that for this budget presentation and as we roll forward with additional budget presentations or future budget presentations. You see the annual mandatory fees that are also part of the budget kind of approval process. You see the FY23 and FY24 numbers, as well as what the increase is there. I've mentioned before, it is our goal, hopefully, that we can talk to this committee about more, through the summer and the fall, and that when we get into the FY25 budget development, what we'd like to do is collapse a lot of these fees, move them into tuition, make the charges that we have for our students much more transparent, much easier to understand. We don't want to get to the point where we were. Sam Warren and I were in front of the Education Committee a few years ago, and they were showing us a bill from a student that was 6 or 7 pages long, and no one could understand it because it was a number of these fees and course fees. University of Maine took the lead a couple of years ago and collapsed their unified fee right into their tuition rate. We'd like to do that for other campuses, but it needs to be done in a strategic manner so that we don't give the impression that tuition or student charges are increasing by more than they actually are. This provides you the FY24 recommended room and board rates across the system. Again, I'm going to note the point up in the top left that the numbers that you see here are those types and meal plans with the greatest number of students in those plans. So there are other plans that we have. Some are cheaper, some are less expensive. These are the most common plans that you see on each of our campuses. Annual comprehensive student charges. So again, this is a slide that we have provided really mostly in the appendix in the past. So you really had to dig to try to find, well, you know, what's the charge if I take the tuition and the fees and the room and board and I kind of roll them all up. This presents all of those, both undergraduate and graduate and law, in-state, out-of-state, and Canadian in one spot. Average annual tuition growth rates. This is a chart that we regularly use. Again, it shows tuition and fees adjusted for inflation are down 5% over the last 5 years. That's certainly a positive if you're a student. Then the downside, I guess, is that it also is suggesting that 50% of the revenue that we use to support our campuses is 5%, adjusted for inflation is down 5% over the last 5 years. So it certainly contributes to some of our budget challenges. We always track tuition as a percentage of Maine per capita income. You can see a consistent decline in that number. We have also looked to other states to compare ourselves, and we fare, as you would expect, very favorably in that, with the lowest tuition rates as a percentage of per capita income of any New England state, with the exception of Massachusetts, which was in the same kind of ballpark as us. We were substantially cheaper. They had higher incomes, but the percentages ended up being the same. Everyone else, our numbers were considerably below our other New England peers. To kind of work to my last few slides here, I wanted to note again, attrition is a big piece of our budgets. It has been for the last several years. We wanted to again roll those up and let you see them all in one place. Attrition simply allows us to leverage that natural flow of our workforce, recognize kind of payroll savings on the front end, rather than having to make difficult budget cuts in July, only to realize that we had $8 million in salary savings when we got to the end of the year. So this essentially allows us to use some historical numbers and provides a budget savings opportunity on the front end. That's just briefly on funded depreciation. Again, total investment is up 1.1 million in this budget. The depreciation expense increased by 3.7 million up to 43.8. That's really a reflection of investments that we're making into our facilities, either through deferred maintenance investments, new facilities coming online. So think of the Ferlin Engineering, Portland Commons, those type of things add to the overall value increases that depreciation target. The next couple of slides, I'm not going to spend any time on. This is the details of the capital investments, the one-year capital plan that you're going to see. We have that scheduled for this committee's next meeting. We'll have Nate Harris join us, and we'll talk in a little bit more detail about these capital investments, both the one-year plan, then we'll roll into the 5-year plan at the meeting after that. You see some details here in your materials, difference between where we were in 23 and 24, and Nate will cover those in details. Again, you can see our plans for both the June and the August FFT to really focus in on those capital plans, talk about where we are, answer your questions. My last couple of slides, again, related to the rolled up budget. So this is a reflection of both the system and all of the individual campuses. I won't roll through all of these individual numbers, but just let me note a couple of things. On the positive side, if you look at the pie chart on the left-hand side, the student share, which is really how you should think about the net tuition and fee revenue, is what percentage are the students paying versus what percentage the state is paying. In the other side, the student share is down from 48 to 47. The state share is up from 43 to 44. So that is certainly a positive. Compensation is always something that we track. It is up 1% from last year to 72%. Overall, you see in the top right, tuition and fee revenue is up by 2.6%. That is a combination of the tuition increase as well as enrollment changes. Compensation is up, as you would expect, net of some of the attrition numbers that I talked about on the previous slide. For auxiliary, there are big changes in auxiliary in the pie charts because of a couple of things. One is related to the new facility, the Portland Commons coming online. So you add another 500 beds into the mix. That changes some of the numbers, gives you some big percentages. So that's not a surprise, but also the change that we have talked about at previous meetings related to the Sodexo transition at the University of Maine, where that biggest impact is on that pie chart. You see the expense pie chart. Last year, that pie chart was 31% compensation, 69% non-comp. As you move out those expenses from the salary and wages line and move them down to reflect a service that we're getting from Sodexo. So you see that in the supplies and services. That flips that pie chart around quite a bit. So overall, again, this is the summary of the proposed budget. It is a $627 million expense budget. It is balanced. You see that right here in the FY24 base column. Not budgeted without its challenges, but given where we are, given some of the enrollment challenges, I feel it's a strong budget. I appreciate all of the great work of the campuses and certainly hopeful that the committee will give it a favorable endorsement. I think this is my last slide. And again, every time we do a budget presentation or we do a budget update or I do a budget forecast, I remind you of Public Law 2011, Chapter 616, which requires periodic reporting on travel and contribution costs by the system to the Board of Trustees. You can see those numbers over on the right. They are all a reflection of what you saw in the budget presentation. We just like to pull those out and highlight travels, meals, entertainment, as well as membership donations, sponsorships. In your budget materials, again, are a lot of the materials that you have seen at our previous ones. So individual enrollment and residence hall occupancies. There are the detailed operating budgets, as well as the final student charges report. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think I'll stop sharing my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions on the 2024 operating budget.
Thank you, Ryan. And first of all, thank you to Vice Chancellor Lowe and his team and the Chancellor and his team and all the presidents of the campuses. I mean, I've come to really appreciate how much work by probably hundreds of people go into the preparation of these campus budgets, and then the system budgets and all the budget officers at the various campuses. Thank you for a job well done. So this is probably the most important thing we do on this committee, is to approve a budget to go before the board. We've been through many meetings on this already, but this is a great summary and our last chance really to weigh in on this before the May meeting. Questions or comments from people about the FY24 proposed budget? Any questions or comments? Yes, Chair Riley. You're on mute.
Second, the commendation of all the work. I would point out, coming to the decision on a tuition increase was a carefully discussed one by the group, and I think it was balanced with great effort by the campuses to build efficiencies. And Ryan, I know we've seen in past materials all the work that went into that, and that you're working on a one-pager, which I think will be highly useful. But I think that's an important point in this public discussion, to recognize that there's some real newfound leadership among the campuses to really look hard at where we can be more efficient.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I think that's
Yes.
a fabulous point. We've since we started this process, we've talked about how we really want this to be a partnership, that when we go to the state and we look for additional resources, that we can do it, or quite frankly, that we go to students and we ask for additional resources, that we know we're being as efficient as we possibly can with those dollars. I feel like we've been doing that, and I thought this time better than maybe we've done in the past. The campuses did a really nice job of kind of pulling all of those individual efforts together, and really highlighting all of the work that's going on in the campuses. And so I just want to echo your comments there.
Others? But I just want to say that
I'm sorry.
it's never good to have an operating deficit, but just to keep things in perspective, we've got this is a total budget of $630 million, and that puts things in perspective. And just to follow up on what Trish said about the tuition increase, I know that the committee thought long and hard about this. Nobody wanted to increase tuition. But we are not immune from the same sorts of pressures that are on every single part of society out there that has increasing costs to deal with, and inflation generally, but particularly inflation of personnel cost, which is over 70% of our total costs. So it was difficult to get behind a tuition increase, but when the cost of everything else is going up so significantly in everyone's lives, I think that the alternative was to be cutting things which would negatively impact on students, and that's what we all wanted to avoid. Yes, Trustee Kane, and then Trustee Michaud.
Thank you. I would say upfront, I think it is responsible that we are raising tuition. And I just want to say that. I think we did not do it lightly, but I think it is responsible. It has been a tool that we have ignored from a responsible budget planning process for too long. And I want to applaud the work of the Chancellor and Ryan and the team of making a responsible case and being very transparent about it, not only with us, but with the legislature and with the public, because we can't, if we're going to have our budget be under control, we can't ignore all the tools available to us. And I think this is a responsible way to address that. And I think it takes a lot of courage to admit it, but I think we've done that. And I appreciate all of the conversation that led to it. I also want to add my kudos and thanks to Ryan and his team. And also will say though, this is still a really hard budget, right? And it's not going to be our last really hard budget. This budget has real consequences on every single campus of this system, and hard choices that are being made at the department level, at the programs level. And I think that cannot be I think we're going to pass a really responsible budget, and this is the right move. But it is not without very tough choices and prioritizations at every single campus. And so I want to commend the presidents also, because they're going to be the ones who have to face those tough questions and conversations more than any of us will on any given day as this budget goes forward. So I appreciate them in advance for the thoughtfulness with which they'll handle those. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Trustee Michoud.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with everything that Trustee Kane has said, and as well as Chair Riley, as far as this budget being a responsible budget. There is a lot of efficiencies in the budget, and I do want to thank the Chancellor and all the presidents and Ryan for all your efforts. My question's actually to Ryan. I know you're putting together a one page on efficiencies. I think it's in the past that the university, we haven't done a good job in getting our message out there. And I think that one pager will, be very helpful. When do you expect that to be done?
Within the next week or so. I mean, we've got all of the information now. So as soon as we got through this piece today, which hopefully we'll get through today, we'll get to work right on that piece.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thanks for the entire team. Appreciate all the work and effort.
Thanks, Trustee Flood.
Thank you. I wanted to just say, I thought it was great that the different vice chancellors work together and the presidents work together on that academic partnerships and finding dollars to help us balance the budget. And that was wonderful. And I hope we can kind of keep digging for those kinds of things that are laying there for us, but we have to just go keep searching for them. But I thought that was great that you came up with that. And I just wanted to say that. I just had a question for Ryan. Ryan, you updated us just briefly about the budget stabilization fund changed in a positive way. And I think you said there was like 1.2 million there. What are our reserves? What is the status of the reserves that we have?
That's it right there. We do have modest other buckets that generally are set aside for kind of very specific targeted purposes. We can certainly get, we'll make a note to get the committee kind of a comprehensive update of that. But when you think about funds that are available to assist campuses that are struggling, it is the number that you saw on the slide. I should also note that is a point in time number until you get through the fiscal year. So a good market, a good day today, and maybe it's 2 million, a bad day, and maybe I'm telling you it's a negative number next month. So fingers crossed.
Okay, I thank you very much.
Other questions or comments? I just wanted to make one more, and that again goes to the tuition increase. I couldn't agree more with particularly with how Emily Kane framed that. We are still by far the best bargain in New England by virtually any measure, and still producing a product, if you will, that is a great educational opportunities for students that still competes with anyone. So I think as a system, we can be proud of that and proud of this budget for that reason. Other comments or questions before we move on? So this is one of the very important things we do here. So I want to read the proposed resolution that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and approves the FY 2024 updated proposed University of Maine system operating and capital budget, recommended student charges, and proposed transfers from institutional reserves, including the carry forward of approved but unexpended budget stabilization funds from FY 2023 to FY 2024. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Michoud
Second.
and
Second.
seconded by Trustee Kane. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, could you please call the roll, Ellen?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Michoud,
Yes.
trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
And it is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to move on and try to just keep going in light of the fact we're still behind here. So if anyone needs to take a break, just go ahead and do it as we go along. The next item, or the next two items really, are proposals for projects at the University of Maine at Augusta. The first one is a lease authorization request from UMA for Cleveland Hall, which is located in Hallowell. And good morning, President Zakis.
Morning, everyone. And yeah, so two exciting opportunities for UMA here presenting to you today. Just as reference and background, so UMA does have 2 buildings in Stevens Commons. We have about 80 beds and we are full. So 100% capacity. When we did that, we did it very deliberately. We did 1 building in 2019, and when it was full, then we started looking for the next one, and now we're full. Last year total, we had over 117 housing requests for our 80 beds. As of today, we have 130, and we expect another 45 to come in just by historical trends and things like that. Currently, we have 45 students still on a waiting list for housing. And so what you see in front of you today is a modest opportunity to help us address that. Cleveland Hall, as Chair Cates has said, is on the Stevens Commons already. So that means, a lot of our infrastructure is already there, our fiber, our shuttle service, our custodial staff, and that sort of thing. So it's really an interesting opportunity for us. This would provide us about 20 more beds for the fall. These beds are all singles. And so that would be priced lower than our existing housing options. So even more affordable and in line with UMA's, I think, mission here. From a unified accreditation perspective, I think these houses over the summer could help us with, obviously with Margaret Chase Smith summer internships. We're less than, I think, about 2 miles away actually from the State House. So there are opportunities for all our students across the system to have modest housing here and embrace those internship opportunities. The other one is Thor, which is the tourism and housing outdoor rec initiatives. UMA is playing a modest role in that to provide policy opportunities for that effort, and obviously being in the Capitol does help that. Both the Board of Visitors and our Faculty Senate, when we brief them on these opportunities, are enthusiastic about it. They see the need and they support this. And I'll just say that in terms of the UMS strategic plan that we are working on right now, housing, at least from UMA's perspective, is, will help us with enrollment, retention, workforce support, and improved our collegiate student experience. And I'll hand it off to Buster for the, as Ryan likes to say, the maybe it's pre-Thanksgiving enjoyment of the numbers here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I know we're pressed for time, so I'll just hit some highlights here, not be redundant on anything. The current design right now is for 23 beds. It is a more dormitory style facility as compared to Erskine and Stevens that are more apartment suites. So we're going into that knowing that and understanding that. There are some improvements that we would like to make to bring it up to our standards. So we would invest about $275,000 up front. We will recover that $275,000 in the first 2 years of operation. The lease is a 10-year lease, $171,000 plus each year for a total of just over $1.7 million over the 10 years. I can assure you, before bringing this before you, we ran many scenarios looking at how we could afford to do this. We took in all the factors, occupancy rate, breakdown between in-state, out-of-state, credit hour production, room rate, as President Zakis mentioned, it'll be less than those at Stevens and Erskine. We also, based on surveys that we received from students, made a forecast of how many new students we would bring in who would not come to UMA otherwise. And we also built that into our computations. And I can assure you that it was very difficult to come up with a scenario that would not work. And I can tell you, in looking at the most realistic scenarios, we would produce enough revenue just from those students who would not otherwise have come to UMA to cover the expenses. So we feel very strongly that we're in a sound position going forward on this project. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your consideration, and we're certainly happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Buster. Questions about this proposal? And we've got the financial projections as part of our packet. But President Zekas, maybe you could just briefly speak a little more to this idea of these being new students. In what particular programs or activities, what makes you confident that these will be new additions to the student body?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll just say that the breakdowns that we're seeing, right, is that, you know, I'll just use architecture as an example, right? They're not, they're not 20 high school students who want to become architects in the state of Maine. Out of state, it matters. And this year with housing, we have now got our largest cohort that we've had really probably in the last 5 or 6 years. And so I see opportunities there. I see, with our, obviously cybersecurity, we'll be talking the next proposal where nursing, is aligned with this as well. And so but I'll also say this, we get, I'll say it's more anecdotal, but that sort of thing is that when we were gathering our information, I talked to our admissions staff and they said, here's, we get calls and they say, you're admitted. They say, great. What about housing? We say you're on a wait list. They say, we're looking elsewhere. And so there's, so we know it's impacting our ability to bring in our recruits. So.
Thanks. Other questions for our UMA folks? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for the presentation. So I'm going to read the text of a proposed resolution that the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded to the consent agenda for Board of Trustees approval at the May 21, 2023 board meeting, that the Board of Trustees approves the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine, acting through the University of Maine at Augusta, to enter into a lease agreement. Excuse me, I apologize, I'm reading the wrong one.
You did have the right one, Trustee Kane.
I do, I'm sorry. To enter into a lease agreement for 6,600 square feet of student residential space in Cleveland Hall with Mastway Development LLC, also known as SC1 LLC, or its successor organization, for 10 years and at a cost of up to $1,711,200, with all final terms and conditions subject to review and approval of the University of Maine System Treasurer and General Counsel. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Trustee Kane and seconded by Trustee Michoud. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ellen, could you call the roll?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Flood,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Michoud,
Yes.
Trustee Riley. The motion is carried.
Thank you. We'll look forward to hearing about progress. The next agenda item, also at UMA, is a lease authorization request for the location at the Marketplace in Augusta. And again, President Zekas.
Thank you so much. So this one is in some respects the same and different, is that we have been looking at our nursing space. Our last 2 cohorts last year was about 68 nursing students. This year currently, although we expect more, is about 53. Our goal, we have designed and built the nursing program to be able to handle 80 students in Augusta, and we haven't hit those numbers yet. And part of it is, I think, the current space, which is also leased. It's the back of the Civic Center. It's functional, but it's not really optimal. It doesn't really help us on the recruiting side. And, we've been looking for opportunities to either build or to provide them with better space. And I think what we saw during the pandemic, but also is just, in general, in terms of nursing education, is that the need for simulation space is great. And that sort of thing. It's become an integral piece of nursing education. So over the summer, we were approached by the folks at the marketplace about a possible building opening. We did our homework. The chancellor and I actually did tour in last summer, and he encouraged me to kind of figure it out, in good supporting fashion. Thank you. The Purdue Global building is what we're talking about right now, which for those of us who have been around Augusta long enough, it was the old Staples that moved to the old Kaplan, which moved to the old Purdue Global. All good, except that UMA does seem to be able to run our competition out of the area now and then, I guess. So now we have a space that has been designed for nursing simulation. There's actually observation rooms, and it's great space. It will help us in two fractions. One is nursing simulation, number one, but also simulation in general is that our cybersecurity folks can also leverage that space for the training that we have been earmarked from a congressional earmark to do for the state of Maine municipalities. So as we started working on this, sharpening our numbers, there are three areas that kind of helped us bring this to today, basically. One is that in partnership with Maine General, and we have a strong partnership with them with our MedLab Tech program. We use them for our nursing clinical sites. We mentioned this; they agreed the space is great, and they have committed over $100,000 for 4 years to help us cover the costs of this effort to actually get to the 80 student per year nursing expansion that we hope to do. Federal earmarks, there's two federal earmarks that we are grateful to our congressional folks for in nursing simulation, but also in cybersecurity for training. And we also have been seeing slow but steady use of our space with the help of our partner Sodexo. And so with that is that there's a lot to like about the opportunity that's in front of us right now. And I'll hand it off to Buster then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'll be very brief so we can keep things moving and not repeat what President Zekas has said. What we're proposing here today is a 20-year triple net lease starting at about $342,000 per year. There is a 3% inflation rate built into that also. So the total amount that we're looking at here over 20 years is about $8.5 million. I do need you to understand that, again, as President Zekas mentioned, we were approached by these developers and property managers at a time we had no idea that the building would be available. When we were approached, they proposed to us a lease rate of $25 per square foot. Over the last several months, I'm telling you today that we had that down to $17 per square foot. Also included in their proposal was the fact that their tenants pay for common area maintenance. We were able to negotiate that with them. That would have run us another $130,000 per year. We have worked it out through some restructuring and reorganization that we will be able to handle that ourselves. We actually have a position that we've held vacant that will be assigned totally to that facility to help maintain it. So that has helped us tremendously in that regard. As we worked on how to pay for this, certainly the increased tuition from nursing comes into play, the increase in revenue that we anticipate from cybersecurity. And as President Zekas mentioned, we weren't quite there to make it happen. And that's when Maine General stepped in, and that put us over the top. So we feel very comfortable with that. In the very first year of operation, we'll bring in 8 additional students in the cohort. So in that first year, we do come up a little short in terms of covering all the expenses, which we will cover with our E&G budget. And those dollars are already built into the FY24 budget. So we are covered from that perspective. There are improvements that we would like to make, particularly in the area of technology. And as President Zekas mentioned, we're very, very fortunate to have the federal earmark. And those expenses will be covered entirely by those federal dollars. So again, thank you for your consideration, Chairman Cates, and we'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Buster. Questions for Buster or President Zekas about this? Yes, Trustee McMahon.
Joe, I think you said you had an existing building behind the Civic Center Is the intent to vacate that building and move here? And are there cost savings associated with that?
We do see eventual moving out of the Civic Center. The Civic Center holds more than just the nursing faculty. It also holds a fitness center for us, as well as some minor things. And I would just say this is that if there is a bond that happens and we get some renovation, we're going to need the space actually to put folks in there while we do the renovation. So we see that over time we will be getting out of the Civic Center, but probably not in the short term.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, then I'll read the text of the proposed resolution that the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded to the Board of Trustees approval at the May 21, 22, 23 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees approves the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine at Augusta to enter into a lease agreement for 20,130 square feet and adjacent parking space at the Marketplace in Augusta for 20 years at a total estimated cost of $8,500,625 plus expenses to be funded from increased tuition revenue, trading revenue, gifts, and E&G funds first year only, with all final terms and conditions subject to review and approval of the University of Maine System Treasurer and General Counsel. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Mishu and seconded by
Second.
Trustee.
It was
King.
Emily. Yeah. It's me.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please, Ellen?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee King,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes,
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley.
Yes,
The motion is carried.
Thank you, and good luck with that. We'll look forward to seeing that sign change, just like the mock-up.
We're looking forward to that as well. So it actually will be the largest space at UMA. So I'm hoping for the next board meeting will be when it's our turn. We'll probably do it there. So thank you so much for your help here.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, moving on then to the next agenda item, which is at tab 4, another lease authorization request, Gulf of Maine Research Institute, University of Maine, President Frini Mundy.
Thank you very much. We have 2 lease authorization requests coming before you. Both of them are examples of longstanding partnerships in our research and development and innovation portfolio. And the first of these is an authorization for an extension of our lease with the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, of course, located in Portland, where there are 2 University of Maine full-time faculty who are stationed at that institute for a lot of reasons. Its proximity to the Gulf of Maine, the laboratories that are there, the access to students and partners in that group. And so I'm going to turn on this one to Kelly Sparks, our Vice President for Finance and Administration and CBO, and Cody Vararamian, the Vice President for Research and Dean of the Graduate School, to tell you more about the request.
Great, thank you, President Frini Mundy. So this is not a new program at GMRI. It is an extension of what we currently have, a facilities use memorandum of understanding. So it is a transition from that form to a formal lease agreement. This is beneficial to the university because we can then apply our indirect cost returns to that lease agreement. So it's a transition. So it's not a wholly new program, as the president mentioned. We're seeking your support for a lease arrangement of up to $100,000 annually. This is an ongoing arrangement. It began in 2006. We established a new MOU with GMRI in 2019. So this will take us into the next 5-year future. We will evaluate it based on the research activity of those faculty. Coming into this year, we anticipate over $700,000 in indirect cost returns from these highly research intensive faculty to cover the cost of this. It has been anticipated and included in our FY24 budget submittal.
Thank you very much. Any questions or Kelly, or is anybody else who is going to present on that subject? That's it? Okay, seeing no questions, then I'll read the text of the proposed resolution. That the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded for Board of Trustee approval at the May 22, 2023 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendations of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine to negotiate and enter into a lease with GMRI for office and laboratory space totaling 2,940 square feet. All final terms and conditions of the lease are to be approved by University of Maine System Treasurer and General Counsel. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
By Trustee Mishu and seconded by Trustee Kane. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ellen, could you call the roll, please?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you very much. We will then move on to the next agenda item, which is discussion of Emerson Hall renewal at the University of Maine at Presque Isle. And I see President Rice.
Thank you, Chair Cates. I'll quickly introduce this and turn this over to my CBO, Betsy Espy Sawhill. But this is the second of our 3 dormitory actions renovations that are taking place. We have just about concluded the renovations at Park Hall to make it more, I would say, more effective in the marketplace for students looking for dormitories. And we've gotten a great response from our early reactions from our students to the renovations we made there in Park. So this allows the $920,000 to be spent upon the second of our 3 dorms that we're addressing, and that's Emerson Hall. And I'll turn it over to Betsy Espy for further information on this proposal.
Good morning, Chair Cates and all others. I thank you first for the access we've had to the deferred maintenance bond money, because we can see the response from our students immediately in the Park Hall renovation. The same scope of work is intended for Emerson, which includes asbestos floor tile abatement, carpeting, painting everywhere, and redoing the bathrooms. On top of that, we're doing the roofs of both Park and Emerson. What I can tell you is the immediate response from our students, since both of these residence halls are 60 years old. The immediate response from our students is a 20% increase in our number of students who are continuing and who've opted to draw into rooms for this fall. That increase in residential participation is huge for us. So we are interested in beginning the Emerson renovation and doing it over 2 years, because we need to jockey between students and residents and getting the work done. We will do the first 2 floors this summer and the 3rd floor next summer. And the total cost of the renovation is $920,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee about this project? I don't see any, so let me read the proposed resolution. That the Board of Trustees acting through the Finance, Facility and Technology Committee authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine at Presque Isle to spend up to $920,000 from the state annual capital improvement commitment over a period of 2 years to accomplish the deferred maintenance needs of Emerson Hall at the University of Maine at Presque Isle. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Mishu and seconded by Trustee Kane. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Ellen, could you call the roll?
I also want to clarify that this action item is within the purview of the committee. It will not need further board action. And for the motion, Trustee Kane, Oh, sorry,
Yes.
trustee Cates, sorry.
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
I'm sorry, had to leave.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. We will now move on to the next agenda item, which is at tab number 6, the Old Town Mill Lease Renewal Authorization Request presented by President Farini Monday.
Thank you very much, Chair Cates. This too is a lease that has to do with a longstanding partnership and is about advancing our R&D efforts here at the University of Maine, particularly with the Forest Bioproducts Research Institute. I'll turn to Kelly Sparks again, and also Jake Ward, Vice President for Innovation and Economic Development, is here to explain this arrangement and make the request.
Thank you, President. I'll turn it over to Vice President Ward as he has more context regarding this lease.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Cates. This is our currently occupied since 2010, 40,000 square foot warehouse space located on the property of the Old Town Paper Mill. It's a standalone building that we occupy and have improved to support our Forest Bioproducts Research Institute. It's what we call our Technology Research Center, which has a lot of a larger scale processing equipment that is ideally located near the mill and not on campus. We currently have a month-to-month lease. Our last 5-year lease expired in January, and we've begun negotiating going forward. They're very interested in keeping us there. So our request is to authorize us to complete that lease with the working through the system council and board of trustees to finalize on probably another 5-year lease, I would expect.
Thank you, Jake. Questions about this project? I am not seeing any, and as Ellen mentioned, this one is also true. This is something we can approve at committee level, does not require board approval.
No, this will be going to the board.
I apologize. It is going to the board. Again, what's the cutoff on this one? Why is this one going to the board?
I'll turn to Ryan for that.
That's all right.
It's greater, it's a 5-year term and greater than $100,000.
I see. Okay, thank you. So the proposed resolution is as follows, that the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded to the Board of Trustees approval, for the Board of Trustees approval at the May 2023 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine to negotiate and enter into leases with ND Paper Inc. at the Old Town Mill on Route 2, Old Town, Penobscot County, Maine, with all final terms and conditions subject to review and approval by the University of Maine System Treasurer and General Counsel. Is there a motion?
So
moved. Second.
By Chair Riley and seconded by Trustee Mishu. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ellen, could you call the roll?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley.
yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. The next agenda item, which is at tab 7, is a discussion of the University of Maine System Custom House Lease. And Vice Chancellor Lowe will present that.
I think I'm going to let the Chancellor cover the intro, and then I'll go into the details.
Great. I will cover the intro. I will have to leave the meeting in the not too distant future to be in a position to testify before the legislature. So I do apologize about that. This is an opportunity, a funded opportunity for us to lease with the intent to purchase the adjoining space to the Law School MBA Muskie Center that we recently opened earlier this year. This is at least a lease period of 3 years with the potential to purchase, the ability to purchase at the end of that 3 years, and upon agreement to do it earlier if it was in our best interest and the property was to be made available. I will note that this is very much related to the center proposal originally funded back in 2017 by the Alphons with an initial commitment, and then subsequently a much larger commitment being made to support these activities. Again, the concept being largely to be in a position to combine programs and offer a unique pairing of MBA, law school, and public policy, which I hope will in the not too distant future also include graduate engineering in the southern portion of the state as well. This has been talked about for a while as a possibility. It has the ability to come into fruition, and it is funded in part by, in total with respect to the ownership of space by the Alfond promise made, now executed to support this particular program to the tune of $40 million. What would eventually happen is, in essence, we would own the current front portion or the 4th Street portion of the building. These are adjoining and attached buildings, along with a custom house portion, which is immediately behind and borders on Commercial Street in downtown Portland. I would say to you that when I first got here, we were talking about a building somewhere between 85 and 100,000 square feet, which would have cost $77 million to build. Adjusting for inflation as well as supply chain costs and labor costs, that a building, that kind of building would probably cost us $115 million. In essence, we will control 100,000 square feet for a purchase price of less than $40 million. Although, again, I would say that a portion of it is highly likely that we will first be a tenant and then execute the purchase. With that, I'll turn it back to Ryan. Ryan, does that set the stage?
Perfect. Thank you, Chancellor. I will kind of walk through the highlights. I'm going to pause after this first paragraph, and Gretchen is going to make sure everyone is familiar with the space that we're talking about, and then I'll pick it back up and we'll be happy to take any questions. So specifically what we're requesting is authorization to enter into a 3-year lease agreement at 7 Custom House in Portland, a 67 square foot property located adjacent to 300 4th Street, where Maine Law is located. So with that, let me pause right there, and Gretchen can make sure everyone knows the property we're talking about, and then I'll continue on.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. So this is the aerial view of the property that we're talking about. The area with the star is the 7 Custom House Street portion of the property. And for your reference, 300 4th Street is located right up from it. They are connected via a common wall and stairwell. And now for your street view, you can see that this is the original building of 7 Custom House, and this is the recent renovation that they did in 2001.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Gretchen. So UMS would be leasing the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th floors and a portion of the 4th floor. There are modest renovations required for the space that would be paid through a recent state deferred maintenance renovation revenue bond. Prior to the completion of the 3rd year of the lease, or within 3 months of notice from the current owner, we would have the option to purchase the property, including the land below 300 4th Street. The purchase would include assuming the current leases, which do provide a significant income to offset any UMS expenses after the purchase. As the chancellor noted, the purchase would be funded by a grant from the Alfond Foundation. It is possible that depending on the timing of when that purchase option becomes available, that UMS would need to kind of temporarily kind of bridge the difference between the Alfond dollars that we have on hand and the purchase price of 7 Custom House. We do not expect that to be substantial, and any costs, closing costs, interest costs would be part of that Alfond agreement. So no negative financial impact to UMS as part of that purchase process. I think those are the kind of the high level summary of the agreement, and happy to answer any questions that the board might, or that the committee might have.
Thank you, Ryan. Questions from the committee on this project? I am not seeing any. So anything further you want to add, Ryan, before we go to a?
Just that we have put together some detailed finances that look at this project both over the 3-year window where we would be tenants versus kind of the next 3-year window when we would potentially be the owners of the property. It is favorable to UMS. We feel very comfortable about that. We do have tentative plans based on conversations with campuses that would kind of fully build out that space. We'll continue to have conversations over the next several weeks to finalize that, but feel really comfortable that we can do this in a way that makes sense fiscally, that takes advantage of this, I think, once in a lifetime opportunity for space of this quality at a substantially reduced rate from something that we could build on our own, and an opportunity where someone else is actually purchasing the property for us, or providing us the resources to purchase the property. So again, I think that's the context we'd want to make sure you knew, and happy to answer any questions.
If I can just pick up on one point that I failed to make, included in this lease slash opportunity to purchase, we would also be purchasing the actual ground underneath the law school, which heretofore would have otherwise been a long-term lease. Although we would own the building, it would be subject to a long-term lease of the land. So we would actually ultimately own both buildings and the land under both buildings as well.
Thank you, Chancellor. Questions for the team? I don't see any. Obviously, an incredibly important and exciting project, and to state the obvious, it wouldn't be happening without the generosity of the Alfond Foundation, for which we are all grateful. So I will read the text of the proposed resolution: that the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded for Board of Trustee approval at the May 22, 2023 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine System to enter into a lease agreement with a purchase option for the purchase of property located at 7 Custom House Street, Portland, Maine, with all final terms subject to review and approval of the University of Maine System Treasurer and General Counsel. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, moved by Trustee Kane and seconded by Chair Riley. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ellen, could you call the roll?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Michew,
Yes.
trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Excellent, and we will obviously revisit this with more discussion at the board meeting.
Chair, with your permission, I'm going
Yes.
to absent myself from the remainder of the meeting. I leave you in good hands of an extraordinary team, which you have working for you.
Well, we don't mind you leaving, since you're going to speak in support of $100 million bond request. So Godspeed.
Thank you for your extraordinary kindness in allowing me to do that. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next agenda item is a financing project and reimbursement resolution regarding the USM Center for the Arts. And Tracy Elliott, the Vice President of Finance and Controller, is going to talk about this one.
Thank you, Chair Cates, and good morning, everyone. This action item, as mentioned, is for financing purposes and relates to the board's recent approval of USM to expend up to $63 million to proceed with the construction of the Center for the Arts building on the Portland campus. As you, I'm sure recall, the CFA has mixed source funding, including University revenue bonding of up to $32 million, of which the state of Maine is funding $9 million of that debt service. Also funding includes philanthropy with a goal of 29 million or more, and funding of 2 million or more from the sale of real estate. This resolution relates to financing the project and reimbursement specifically, and meets the requirements of state statute and Treasury regulations. It also allows us to use debt, including tax exempt debt, and allows the system to issue internal debt while awaiting bond financing. Internal debt provides some flexibility to allow an economical use of the revenue bonding, minimizing interest burden, while also accommodating the timing of the revenue bonding process, which is significant. Further, the reimbursement resolution itself allows project costs incurred 60 days prior to the board approval to be reimbursed with subsequent financing. That's really it in a nutshell, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Questions about this project or this resolution? I'm not seeing any, so let me read the text of the resolution. That the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded to the Board of Trustees approval at the May 22, 2023 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and approves the financing and project authorization resolution related to the issuance of indebtedness not to exceed $32 million for the purpose of financing the University of Southern Maine Center for the Arts project on the Portland campus, including design and construction of an approximate 40,000 square foot facility, including an anticipated 200-seat performance hall and fine arts gallery space. Further, that the Board of Trustees approves the reimbursement of project expenditure. Finally, that the Board of Trustees approves issuance of a University of Maine system internal loan to the University of Southern Maine as determined by the treasurer for the purpose of funding project costs that will be reimbursed with debt issuance proceeds. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Michoud and seconded by Trustee Kane. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ellen, could you call the roll?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Michoud,
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. And again, congratulations to all those who have worked so tirelessly on this project for so many years. It's coming back before us today. But if that weren't enough, we have one more agenda item also dealing with the center, which is the prospect of naming the new Center for the Arts at the University of Southern Maine Portland campus. President Edmondson.
Thank you, Trustee Cates. We are very pleased to bring forward a proposal to name the Center for the Arts in honor of an extraordinary benefactor who's championed the arts and student success at USM in some deeply impactful ways. And to share more details, I will turn this over to Ainsley Wallace, who is the president and CEO of the USM Foundation. Ainsley?
Thank you, President Edmondson. And good morning. The proposed honoree for the naming of the building has been an extraordinary donor and volunteer, and has supported the School of Music for decades and has personally supported the fundraising efforts for the Center for the Arts in ways that have been inspirational for other people. We plan to, if approved by the trustees, we plan to make this individual aware of the naming at a date over the summer, and then publicly share this information as part of the groundbreaking in the fall, which will correspond with President Edmondson's installation. The other elements that I want to make sure you're aware of is that in bringing forward this naming, we've done professional research on this individual to make sure that there's the highest degree of integrity in putting forward this name on a building, and that this has been voted on and unanimously approved by President Edmondson's cabinet.
Thank you both. Questions for either President Edmondson or Ainsley Wallace about this motion? I am seeing none. So let me read the text of the proposed motion that the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded to the consent agenda for Board of Trustee approval at the May 21, 2023 board meeting, that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Southern Maine to name the future Center for the Arts, with the naming details to be announced publicly at a later date.
So moved.
Such a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Mishu
Second.
and seconded by Trustee Kane. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ellen, could you call the roll?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Mishu,
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to further developments. The next regularly scheduled agenda item is our regular review of IT projects with a value of $250,000 or greater. And I believe David Demers is with us.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cates. I'm going to throw the slides up, and I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, make sure we still leave Carolyn McDonough her allotted 5 minutes at the end. I believe you all have the slides, and the focus of this particular report is going to also and continuing to be on repaving Main Street. Just as a refresher, that we are taking an initiative to overhaul our core ERP and student information systems, looking to leverage cloud-enabled functionality in our financials and HR space, while rebuilding our student information system to have greater integration and provide efficiency for overall processing and workflow in these environments. So you approved $16.8 million to cover this particular initiative. We are breaking it up into 2 different cloud phases and then the campus solutions reimplementation phase. Focusing on the cloud phases. For phase 1, we're about a third of the way through, which is going live with our HR system in the Oracle Cloud product. And then phase 2 will be our overall migration of financials and purchasing into our cloud-enabled solutions. We're about 9% of the way through that particular project. Campus solutions reimplementation, we're still in the discovery phase. So even though it says 0% completion on the project, I can tell you that there have been an innumerable number of hours spent on doing a deep dive on campus solutions to identify where our key opportunities lie in rebuilding out that environment. And I'll touch on that in just a second. So focusing on our cloud implementation project, again, we are breaking this up into 2 phases. The first phase is going live with our HR environment. So we are steeped in the middle of doing some application review for that particular project and honing in on being able to see the initial build of our financials application coming up very shortly here. In terms of overall status, I do have to report that we are behind schedule, particularly on the HR rollout. A lot of this is due to some staffing resources. There's been a lot of turnover on our HR side. We were fortunate enough to bring on an additional project resource from our consultant that we've worked with in the past to help stabilize and maintain some momentum on this. We are playing catch up. It's still to be determined whether our ability to go live on our intended timeline, which is December of this year, is still going to be viable. And we should have clarity on that within the next couple of weeks here. We are going forward with doing some initial application reviews on the HR side. We completed our initial reviews during the March 20 timeframe, and we have actually started the self-guided review. So this is staff going in and playing with the system, getting hands-on experience with it, seeing how it works and feels, so that we can make informed decisions on how to build additional functionality within the platform. That kicked off earlier this month. And I can tell you that just going in and looking at the system, seeing how it behaves is making it more real for us, so that we are actually picking up some momentum, because we can actually see what the platform looks like. On the left-hand side is what the Main Street environment looks like today for staff members. This is what it looks like in the future state build. And I'm going to just provide a few visuals here just to give you a sense of some of the additional functionality and flexibility that you see here. So this is what a timesheet would look like for an individual. So they'd go in and they'd have to pick the right date column to be able to enter the hours, and then drop down for reporting a particular day off. In the new environment, it's much more streamlined. You have running tallies to see what your totals are, what your available time off balances are, and being able to log those in a much more streamlined fashion. In addition to this, this is one of the things I'm most looking forward to, is being able to get a better sense of the teams that you have working for you. In the current environment, you can get a listing of everyone that is on your team, which is great. In the new environment, it actually provides that to you in a visual org chart, where you can actually see reporting lines and drill through to see who is on a particular team, and being able to drill into an individual to get updates on what their status is and how it all works. The other thing that's going to be real nice is that we have integrated recruiting in this environment. So instead of using a third-party recruiting tool, all job postings will be available for individuals to look at through the portal. So let's say you are a member of the University Main System community right now. You want to look at what the internal job openings are. It's just a matter of clicking on that. It takes you right into the openings that you might qualify for. And it's just a matter of looking at that posting and being able to apply. It's going to bring all of your information automatically into the system and save our HR partners countless hours of entering information collected from the third-party system, even though you're an internal candidate, and tying it to your employment record. So it's just going to streamline things greatly on that particular regard, and also impact our ability to onboard student employers or employees as well. So really looking forward to being able to leverage some of that new functionality. On the ERP side, we are ramping up to be able to do our initial review of what this ERP application is going to look like. That will begin in early May, which is right around the corner. We're going to focus on general ledger, accounts receivable, and cash management. Those sessions have been scheduled. We're still working out some details on how to make sure that the integrations that we use for existing third-party tools, including our purchasing environment, which is called, a platform called Jagger, we call it Marketplace internally, as well as travel and expense management, which is a product from SAP called Concur. Those are all tied together and integrated in this new environment. We are looking at down the road being able to layer in more discrete project grants and contracts modules that will help us to have greater insight in terms of tracking those expenditures directly through the cloud system. In terms of identified risk, we still know that nailing down the integrations with these tools is going to be critical. We do have the ability to tap into institutions that are already integrating their Oracle Cloud environments with both of these different tools, and talking with them to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and learn from their mistakes and successes to inform our overall strategy. Another key thing that we want to make sure we keep an eye on, another risk that has been identified, is making sure that the entire University Main System community is informed on what we are doing with this particular project. I'm going to talk about some results of a survey we just sent out toward the end here, so I put that as an asterisk. I do want to look at the Campus Solutions Reimplementation Project, though. So as I said, we're still in the discovery phase, though that is winding down. We have recently launched a number of what we refer to as business process assessment sessions. Those started the week of April 10th, and they will continue to run through midsummer. This is where we look at existing business processes, deep dive with those functional offices. And I have had a chance to sit in on a number of these sessions, and I will say that we are leaving a lot of available functionality on the table and doing things that are much more manual than they need to be. And it's been an eye-opening experience, not just for me, but I think for the staff that have participated in these sessions. So I am confident that when we get through these overall BPA sessions, we will have a timeline and an implementation plan that will help us achieve a much higher degree of efficiency and workflow automation that we don't have available today, simply because folks are not aware of the features that are available in the Campus Solutions environment. So very excited about what I'm seeing on this one. We recently completed an update to People Tools, which is the interface that people interact with when they're in the Campus Solutions environment. And that is going to be the building block or the baseline for moving forward with this re-implemented Campus Solutions environment. In terms of the business process assessment sessions, this is just giving you a sampling of the areas that we are doing that deep dive on, including things like advisory reports, degree progress reports, financial aid processing and packaging, curriculum management on the student record side, and various integrations on the admissions side. So all of these are going to have opportunities to leverage enhanced functionality within the Campus Solutions environment to drive efficiencies and get away from some of the manual, more cumbrous, onerous processes that we've held on to simply because we don't know or we didn't know what else was available in the platform. I mentioned that one of the risks that we have here is awareness. We want to make sure that everyone that wants to be engaged with this process has an opportunity to be able to be engaged. One of the things that we've noted is that these BPA sessions are going to trickle into the summer. We want to make sure that we have an opportunity to engage with faculty, particularly on the student record side, and so that they have an understanding, student records and advising sides. We want to make sure they have the ability to participate. So we're likely to schedule some additional sessions in the early fall, just to make sure that we capture all of that feedback. We did send out an awareness survey results with our monthly project update to the community last March, or just last month, I should say. I'm going to share a few preliminary results with you. One, we've received about 450 responses, which isn't tremendous, but it's better than having fewer, let's put it that way. And if you take a look at the key question that we asked, were you aware or are you aware of what this initiative is? 85% said that they were aware of it. Then we did a deep dive in terms of some of the things that we know we probably want to keep an eye on in terms of additional communication and improvement. One was whether the vision for the project has been clearly communicated. And you can see here, there is a mixture of responses. Obviously, we have an opportunity to make sure that we are making the vision of the project clear to everyone, as well as how the project is going to impact the overall user experience. Without being able to demo things and provide visuals like I just shared with you, it's been a bit of a challenge to let folks see how the actual impact to the user experience that's going to look like. So we are hopeful that as we move forward with the implementation project, providing those visuals will help us to chip away at improving that particular metric, as well as making sure that everyone understands the goals, why the project is happening at this time, how the project is going to benefit the university, and how that they can plug in and be supportive of the initiative. So all of these are areas of opportunity for us to improve, and we will continue to do so as we build out our communication and awareness campaigns. Last thing I'll point out on this slide is that we did ask a couple of closing questions, how comfortable folks were with the rate of change that we are imparting through this project. And as you can see, there's an appetite to move faster, which is good. We just want to make sure that we don't move so fast that we break things. So that's finding a right balancing act. We also asked whether or not we are communicating too infrequently, too much, or right about the amount, right around the amount that's necessary. And you can see that we got a mixture of responses there. And the last one is the one that I'm most, I guess, troubled with. And that is, we asked if you were would you be willing to participate in future sessions to provide your feedback? And we got a 66% response rate on no on that one. So trying to understand why folks do want to see more change. They want to see that this project is going to be successful, but maybe not necessarily want to lean in as much as we need them to in order to make this an overall success. So lots of work to do. We are honing in on the opportunity to be able to share more functionality with end users and the board as we build out some of these new tools, platforms, and features. So more to come on this, and I am happy to address any questions at this time.
David, thank you very much. There we go. Are there questions for David Demers on his presentation today? I am not seeing any, so thank you very, very much, as always. One thing before we get to our last agenda item, I forgot to mention, I'd just like to thank Ben Doherty, who's the Board of Trustees student representative, as well as Paige Allen and Michael DeLorge from University of Maine student government, who got to us either last night or today a memorandum talking about the student activity fees and weighing in on that issue. It's a very thoughtful and helpful memorandum and really informed our discussion of that issue. So thank you very much for that. And last but not least, our final agenda item, as always, is capital projects status report and 2018 bond projects updates from Carolyn McDonough. Hi, Carolyn.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for saving me those 5 minutes. I will try to take up even less than that, but as usual, my report is in the materials, and you can see that from the capital projects report, we're currently tracking 36 projects on there for a total of about $400 million. So lots and lots going on, as you are fully aware. Just note that there are a handful of projects on the list that were of the larger size that were partially or fully funded with 2018 bond funds that are complete, but they're going to remain on the list until we close out the percent for art process, which is trailing behind a little bit, but we are working through that. On the bond projects, that report, currently that list is holding steady, but we've still got around $5 million worth of that bond money to be spent. We do have plans for the majority of it, and a lot of that will be taking place this summer. And I shouldn't say a lot of it, because 2018 bond money we will be spending this year. So we're working on that one. A couple of highlights to point out in the other summaries. There's a brief update on Farmington's ESCO energy savings project. They're moving along with that and making some great progress there, including securing $140,000 in efficiency main rebates for that project. So that one is moving right along. And they hope to have that, or expect to have that 90% complete before the end of this calendar year. Similar lines, UMaine's energy project, not in the same stage, but they're moving along in design progress there, and we hope to have more information in the coming months, in the coming meetings on that project. Just a note of the Alfond Foundation funded athletics projects. The softball complex did have a grand opening and their first game on April 1st. It was very exciting, and the weather was cooperative back then, at least. Not so much today. And then lastly, just the Center for the Arts project, as we've talked about a few times already today, but that project, we got site plan approval from the city of Portland last month. So moving forward on that and expecting a guaranteed maximum price from the contractor in the coming month. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Carolyn. Questions for Carolyn? I am not seeing any. So thank you very, very much. And I believe we are done with our agenda. Any other comments people have for the good of the general order here? Not seeing any. So thank you all very much for your attention throughout this long meeting with a great deal packed into it. We did some very important things today that it turns out in the end we're totally by consensus, but that shouldn't take away from all the hard work that everybody did to get to that consensus on a number of these things. So thank you very much. Everybody have a great afternoon. We do not need a motion to adjourn, and I will declare us adjourned.
Thank you.